Nashville Public Radio serves Middle Tennessee in many ways every day, including through this podcast. You can support it by leaving a review or rating, by telling a friend about it, or by contributing at WPLN.org/give.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's January 20th, 2026. And if we were at a different point in the U.S. political cycle, this would be Inauguration Day. That's basically set in stone by way of the 20th Amendment, which says the president should be sworn into office at noon on January 20th in the year following his election. It also sets the start of the congressional session on January 3rd of the same year and gets into what should happen if the person elected to be president dies before taking office. Now, the 20th Amendment was adopted in 1933. We were a long way into this American experiment at that point. For those many years prior to the amendment, Inauguration Day was in March. It's hard to imagine such a long delay after the election, right? Well, members of Congress are sworn in and started their work early in December, and not the December right after their election. No, from winning the election to taking office, senators and representatives used to have to wait 13 months. That wasn't by design. The congressional start month was set in the Constitution as December. But the practicalities of getting the government up and running for the first time meant that logistically, things didn't really get underway until March of 1789. George Washington began serving as president then. The first Congress came to town to conduct business that December, in line with what the Constitution said. And that created a precedent that before long was a, well, this is how we've always done it situation. Kind of like the story about the person who always cut a chunk off the end of the meat when making a pot roast because their mom taught them it was essential, only to later learn that was only part of the family recipe because grandma's pot was too small for the meat sold at her grocery. So yeah, it took until 1933 for folks to decide it was time to set the status quo aside and start doing things in a way that actually made more practical sense. The amendment was not ratified in time for that year's inauguration. So the first time a president was sworn in on this day was the start of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's second term in 1937. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. So thanks to the 20th Amendment, FDR's time in office set a new norm for the timing of government business. And I guess you could say his example reinforced that by the fact that he was then inaugurated again on 2 additional January 20ths. He was the only president ever to serve 4 terms. And as long as the 22nd Amendment is the law of the land, he'll be the only 4-term president. That one set the 2-term limit back in 1951. Now, 2 terms had been the established norm ever since George Washington opted to not run for a 3rd time. But before the 22nd Amendment, stepping down after 2 terms was just a custom, not a requirement. Middle Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles did file a bill proposing a new amendment to bump that limit up to 3 terms in the White House. But his measure was introduced a year ago this week, and so far, there's been no action on it. On the state level, the timeline's been a little different. The state's first constitution set the governor's term to be only 2 years long, but there was also a firm term limit from the start. A governor was not legally allowed to serve more than 3 times in a row. Another constitution was adopted about 40 years later, then a 3rd one took effect after the Civil War. But those details of the governor's time in office stayed the same through all 3 versions, all the way until 1953. That year, the state held a constitutional convention and passed an amendment that changed the governor's term to be 4 years long. But it specified that a governor could not serve 2 consecutive terms. There wasn't a limit on how many terms total, but they couldn't be back-to-back. And so right after that, there was a kind of alternation that went on for a while. Frank Clement was governor, then Buford Ellington. Back to Clement again, and then Ellington took another turn. The way things work now dates back to an amendment added in 1978, which said a governor can serve up to 2 terms in office at 4 years per term. Our current governor, Bill Lee, is in the final year of his 2nd term. That means the speech he gives to the General Assembly next month will be his last State of the State. This legislative session is his last big chance to shape how things work in Tennessee, at least as a governor. And it means that at some point this year, the state's political focus will shift to picking who will take his place in the governor's office. The primary election is August 6th. The general election will be on November 3rd. In just a few minutes, the Health Q Project on one way your insurance plan may help you get in shape. That's coming up after the newscast.
I like to say Nashvillager in the morning. This is Nashville in the afternoon. I'm Blake Farmer, the new host, and yes, WPLN's midday show is also a podcast, and we understand lunchtime listening may not be your thing, but that doesn't mean you have to sit out. You can listen wherever you get your podcast, like right here, or ask your smart speaker to play the latest episode of This is Nashville.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. With the state legislature back in session, immigration policy is once again in the spotlight. In 2025, lawmakers passed several immigration-related measures, including the creation of a state immigration enforcement division, penalties for local sanctuary policies, and expanded cooperation with federal authorities. During a legislative preview on our daily show, This is Nashville, WPLN State House reporter Mariana Bacallao tells host Blake Farmer that this year Tennessee has emerged as a leading partner with the federal government on immigration policy.
Did we get any more understanding of how closely we're coordinating with the White House on these things?
Lawmakers weren't very forthcoming about who approached who,
Right.
But Tennessee is expected to go first to pilot that sort of legislation that coordinates state and federal immigration enforcement efforts. So we'll see how it pans out.
Other measures high on the agenda this year deal with transgender rights and private school vouchers. Meanwhile, the consequences for disruption at the legislature have become more severe.
I think that since the Covenant school shooting and the subsequent protests that we saw there, the legislature has adopted these measures against protesting, particularly in the House with the gallery. We saw 4 individuals who were escorted out by state troopers during the first House floor vote of the year. And under House rules, that was their first strike. If they get another, they're banned for all of session.
You can hear more of our legislative preview roundtable discussion through the This is Nashville podcast feed. A professor who was suspended from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville will not return to the classroom before her lawsuit against the school goes to trial. Tamara Sherinian was a tenure-track professor of cultural anthropology before she was suspended in September over social media comments about Charlie Kirk's death. Sherinian says the suspension punished her for constitutionally protected speech and violated her due process rights. Sherinian also says the university has created a double standard after another professor was allowed to keep his job after tweeting that motorists should run down protesters blocking traffic in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2016. In that case, the professor was investigated, but the school found his speech was protected by the First Amendment. Sherinian's attorney points out to Knox News that her comments did not encourage violence against anybody. Sherinian has filed a lawsuit against the school. Student newspaper The Daily Beacon reports the judge denied a temporary injunction that would have allowed her to return to the classroom. The trial is scheduled for January 19th of next year. An Austin Peay professor was recently reinstated and received a $500,000 settlement after being fired for his comments about Charlie Kirk's killing. A state program to help families pay for property taxes is running out of money. This could hurt more than 100,000 Tennessee seniors, veterans, and other families who depend on this assistance to pay for all or part of their property taxes. More than 50 years ago, the state set aside the funds to reimburse these residents, but after this year, no funds will be left in reserve. The state comptroller's office hopes the administration will request additional funds this coming legislative session. Well, surveillance cameras are yet again stirring up debate in Nashville. This time, the controversy centers on a $15 million grant, which would be used in part to buy new video cameras for the police department. WPLN Cynthia Abrams reports that community groups are speaking out at Nashville's Metro Council as they take up the grant tonight.
Dozens of people showed up to a rally in downtown Nashville last week.
Tell me what safety means.
Housing, healing, dignity.
It was held by Nashville Organized for Action and Hope, or NOAA. They were protesting some of the things the safety grant would be used to pay for, like surveillance cameras and an armored rescue vehicle for downtown Nashville. So the group is asking for a new Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, the agreement that oversees how the money is used. it has to be approved by the Metro Council.
In its current state, it's heavily weighed on surveillance, and it's heavily weighed on the militarization of our local law enforcement.
That's Alicia Haddock, a member of NOAA, who says she wants to see Metro focus on investing in people rather than policing. The district council member, Jacob Coupin, also made an appearance. He said he's not against the purchase of surveillance cameras, but that he feels the existing agreement didn't have the right amount of community engagement.
You know, we've got people that die on our streets every day that surveillance could have helped. But we also know that surveillance can be harmful, and it's trying to find that balance.
Surveillance cameras in Nashville have been a divisive topic for nearly a decade. Over the last several years, this council has repeatedly rejected the use of Fusus, a controversial police surveillance tool. In this case, the $15 million is currently in the hands of the Nashville Downtown Partnership, where it sits without oversight until the council approves an agreement.
People have to say.
Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
The city of Clarksville may take over an outreach center that serves unhoused people. The Well is currently a church ministry offering hot meals, clothing donations, and religious services. News Channel 5 reports city leaders are considering purchasing the building and expanding the assistance to include case management, showers, laundry facilities, and shelter for times when the weather is extreme. If the plan goes through, leaders say the facility will not be used as a 24-hour shelter. Tennessee is in widespread drought for the fifth year in a row. WPLN's Caroline Eggers reports that dry conditions covered 98% of the state in the latest look from the U.S. Drought Monitor.
Tennessee is dry. About 80% of the land meets the qualifications for moderate drought. That can create complications like dust, fire risk, and higher water demand. The state has been no stranger to drought in recent years, partially due to climate change. There's been a clear pattern of more precipitation on rainy days, but then long dry stretches. Fall has been the most common season for drought. That's because the region relies on rainfall pushed up from tropical storms. So it can be uneven. In 2024, Hurricane Helene dumped a ton of rain across the state, including about 8 inches in Nashville. But it still wasn't enough to break a persistent drought. Winter droughts have other factors. Warmer than average temperatures can impact dryness, and this year, the complex weather pattern called La Niña is likely playing a role in lower rates of rainfall. Caroline Eggers, WPLN News.
Vanderbilt University is hosting its 4th annual environmental conference tomorrow. The conference will include panels on Tennessee's water, energy, land use, and conservation. Guest speakers include professors, the president of the Nashville Electric Service, and the Tennessee director of the Southern Environmental Law Center. The event begins at noon at Vanderbilt's Law School and is open to the public. A networking reception will commence afterwards at about 5 p.m. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. If you're considering signing up for a new gym membership this year, it's worth looking into whether your health insurance might help with some or all of the cost. We bring you our new series called Health Q. Reporters Kara Anthony and Blake Farmer are approachable guides to an unapproachable health system.
Blake, last January, I did the thing people always do. I made a resolution to work out more.
Oh, listen, I get it. New year, new you.
So I joined this hot yoga studio, but I'll be real, I only went 3 times all year.
3 times, okay.
Yes, I know it's shameful, but you know what helped me feel a little bit better? The place that I work has a wellness benefit that helps with the cost of that membership.
Well, that's not bad. Well, since we're sharing, I will admit that I don't even know if we have a wellness benefit like that.
You should check. I spoke with our colleague Phil Gelwitz, who reports on insurance here at KFF Health News. He says most insurance providers want to get people to exercise more. We're talking private insurers as well as Medicare for older adults and Medicaid for people with lower incomes.
It's relatively cheap for insurers and employers to offer. I mean, spending a few $100s for a fitness membership versus if you can avoid one visit to the emergency room, that's avoiding several $1,000s in cost.
Some plans also offer wellness incentives that pay for health coaching or wearable fitness trackers, but it's not clear that people are taking advantage of these benefits. Phil says that's probably because most people don't know they have them.
Phil, I feel attacked, but to be fair, I know other health reporters who also don't necessarily read their own insurance benefits package closely.
Yeah, but you can also call the number on the back of the insurance card and ask.
I do forget about the easy button sometimes. Let's talk about the gym membership benefit. What's in the fine print?
The most important thing to know is that every plan is different. You might be able to go for free or just get a discount, usually around 10 to 30%.
So I can't count on free. I guess a discount's better than nothing.
Don't knock a discount. It can make a difference. We talked to Joshua Villegas from San Antonio, Texas. He uses a discount program through his insurance that offers a flat monthly rate for partner gyms. He uses it for 2 gyms.
I am paying $51 a month for both memberships, and I would say I'm saving a little over $30 a month.
But you have to check the details. There's a LA Fitness close to his house that doesn't participate, so he drives about 15 minutes more to one that does.
Well, he sounds like a motivated dude. Well, does any of this inspire you for your resolution this year?
Definitely, Blake. You know I want to try again. Same resolution, but this time I'm determined. And I know that's the thing that people always say, but it's on the record now.
Well, all right. We'll hold you to it.
That's Kara Anthony and Blake Farmer of HealthQ from WPLN and KFF Health News. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.